So today we're going to start chapter 2. We're going to cover section 1. And today we're going to learn how to analyze conditional statements. So it's going to be a lot of vocabulary, a lot of memorizing terms, and then writing sentences, not so much math. So for the conditional statement, it's going to have two parts. It's going to have a hypothesis and it's going to have a conclusion. It can be written in if-then form. So for example, notice in my sentence here, or my statement, I've highlighted or written the letters in red. So the red is the hypothesis. And the letter that's usually used to indicate a hypothesis using math symbols is going to be the letter P. And then the conclusion I've written in blue, and that's usually represented by the letter Q. Now, when you're making these conditional statements, the statement does not have to be true. So for example, on my conditional statement that I've made, and this is all logic based, if you study, then you will get an A. This statement doesn't necessarily have to be true. Maybe you only studied a little bit and you got close to an A, but maybe you got the B. So this may or may not be a true statement, depending on how much you study. Next, we have the negation of a statement. And that's just writing the opposite of the original statement. So for example, my original statement could be, it is raining. So the negation of that statement, or the opposite, would be to say that it is not raining. If the original statement has the word not in it, then when you go to write the negation, you take out the word not. So basically, you're just going to add in the word not if the original doesn't have it to negate it, or if it has it, you take it away. Now, for some of these statements, in order to make it sound grammatically correct, we may not just put in the word not. We may change to make it sound grammatically correct. We may change the word, and we're going to see what I'm talking about coming up. So on all of these different things we're going to talk about, you need to memorize what it means to make a statement, to write the negation of a statement. Pretty good on the negation slide? Let's go on to the converse. So a converse is formed by changing the order of the hypothesis and the conclusion. So we're switching the order. So for example, here is my original statement from the other slide, and my hypothesis is here in red. If you study, then you're going to conclude that you get an A, and that's your conclusion. So now to write the converse, we're going to take the blue and we move it to the front and put it after the if, and then you move the red to after the word then. So we're switching the spots. Now notice I did not move it word for word. Notice when I moved the blue, notice here it had get, and then I changed it to got. So you can change the word to make it sound grammatically correct. So again, all we're doing here for the converse is we're switching. So we switch the order. So we're going to reverse the hypothesis and the conclusion spots. Now, whenever they ask you to identify a hypothesis, it does not include the word if. It follows the word if, and then when you ask to state the conclusion, you're not going to use the word then, but it's going to follow the word then. And we're going to see this coming up. So understand that the converse means you switch the order. Next, we're going to do the inverse. And the inverse is formed by negating both the hypothesis and the conclusion. So remember, the negation just meant you added in the word not, or you made it opposite. Now when you see the word inverse, we're going to add in not to both the hypothesis and the conclusion. But if it has the word not originally, then we take it away. This is going to be the case where I'm not going to just put in the word not. Because if I were to put in the word not, I could say, if you not study, then you not get an A. That doesn't sound correct. It doesn't sound like it's correct grammar. So instead of saying, if you not study, I put in the word didn't instead, and then didn't here. Okay. Technically, if you just wrote the word, if you not study, then you not get an A. Technically, that is the correct mathematical interpretation of an inverse. However, it doesn't sound grammatically correct. Does that make sense? So for inverse, you're adding in the negation. So you're going to add in the not, or the opposite. So the next thing that we're going to do is turn it into a contrapositive. The way that we do this is the longest word, it seems like, so it's got the most steps. You're going to form the contrapositive by writing the converse and then negating both the hypothesis and the conclusion. Now, you can choose to negate first and then flip. It's up to you. But again, this is going to involve 2 steps. So 2 steps. We have to flip it to the converse, and then we're going to negate it. So my original statement, if you study, then you will get an A. If you choose to flip first, so from here to here was the flip, and then from here to here was adding in the negation. So if you study, then you will get an A, and then if you reverse it, so again, here was my original hypothesis and my original conclusion, and then if you flipped it and put the conclusion first, and then the hypothesis, and then in that last step, you added in the not. So contrapositive, you're going to do 2 things, flip and negate, or if you'd rather negate and then flip, either way, but you have to do both. Biconditional statements. So this one states, if the conditional statement and its converse are both true, the statements can be rewritten as a biconditional statement. And what we're going to be doing is using the words if and only if. So when we rewrite the statement, we're going to take out the words if, we're going to take out the word then, and then where the word then was originally, we're going to put in these words, if and only if. Now, if you want to abbreviate that as IFF, instead of writing out if and only if, this is the abbreviation that I look for. Any definition that we learn can be written as a biconditional statement. You can either write your biconditional based off the original conditional or off its converse. However, the main thing to remember is that the original conditional and its converse both need to be true. So this first example, if an angle has a measure of 90 degrees, then it is a right angle. This is actually the definition of a right angle. So next they want me to do is take that statement and rewrite it as its converse. So remember the converse, we're going to flip it. So the converse now of this example, I'm going to flip it. So again, here is the original hypothesis, and here is its conclusion. I'm going to switch it. Now again, I'm going to make it sound grammatically correct. So I'm going to say if, and I'm going to take that blue, and I'm going to say, instead of if it, I'm going to actually say if an angle, so it sounds a little bit better grammatically, if an angle is a right angle, then, and now I'll write the red, and then instead of writing an angle again, I can put it has a measure of 90 degrees. That is the converse. Now again, what you need to double check is that both the original one, if an angle has a measure of 90 degrees, then it's a right angle. This one is true. As well as the converse is also true. If an angle is a right angle, then it has a measure of 90 degrees. This one is also true. So because both the original conditional statement and its converse are both true, I can now write a biconditional statement. Now, when you go to write the biconditional, you can either choose to write it based off the original or based off the converse. And I'm going to show you both ways. So I'm going to write the biconditional. And then the first time I do it, I'm going to use the original. So my original, again, when I write a biconditional, I'm going to drop the word if and I'm going to drop the word then. So off my original, I'm going to say an angle, because I'm dropping the word if, has a measure of 90 degrees and now here's where I'm going to add in the words if and only if, and again, if you don't want to write all those, you can just put IFF. And then now I don't write the word then you're just going to say it is a right angle. This is the biconditional based off my original conditional statement. I can also write a biconditional off the converse. Now, if on the test or the quiz I don't specify, you can choose. But if I tell you write a biconditional using the original, then you have to do the one I tell you. So based off the converse, which was written right here, again, remember you're going to drop the word if. So I'm going to start by saying an angle is a right angle and again, don't use the word then. I'm going to again use if and only if. This time I'll abbreviate it. And then you would say the red, it has a measure of 90 degrees. If the instructions say biconditional, to rewrite as biconditional, it will not have this at the beginning. So this gets removed. Let me do this in black. So this gets removed. And then here where the word then was, that gets taken out. And in its place you write IFF, if and only if. So it basically looks like So for, again, this was based off the Converse. So it looked exactly the same. The only thing is I took out this, I took out this, and then in there I put IFF.
Okay, thank you.
Or if you did the same thing to the original, you took out if and then, and for this one, the biconditional off the original, again, I take out if, I took out then, but here I put IFF. And that's how you turn it into the
Will
biconditional.
we ever see like a question that doesn't have if and then as like on there?
You're going to be given statements or definitions, and you're going to have to turn it into an if then, and we're going to do that coming up. You'll turn it into your own if then, and then from there it'll ask you to do different things to it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, the next slide has the related conditionals written with symbols. So in words, it has if P then Q, that's your original conditional. And again, from that very first slide, I told you P represents the hypothesis, Q represents the conclusion. So instead of writing the words if P then Q, you can just put a P and then an arrow pointing to the Q. Remember, for the converse, you switch it. So that's why now they have the Q and then the P. And then for the inverse, remember that's negating it. So the to negate something, it looks like this little wave, almost like the top of a congruency symbol. So you would put the little wave there, then P, then the arrow, then the negation, and then Q. And then the contrapositive, remember that's the longest word, so you do two things. We flip and negate. And then the biconditional, remember you can write it either way. So it can be based off the converse or the conditional, and that's why the arrow points in both directions. So these are just math symbols, just in case you see this on a standardized test. Understand what these arrows are indicating. So here we go. We have some statements that do not have the words if and then written in them. So they want us to, again, we're going to write our sentences now, rewrite them, and we're going to include the words if and then. And then I'm going to use red when I write my hypothesis. I'll write it in red letters. And then I'm going to write my conclusion in blue. So let's go ahead. And again, we can add words into it. So again, so it makes sense grammatically. So I'm going to start by saying if. And then I'm going to add the words an animal is a bird, comma, then, and then the conclusion, it has feathers.
Oh, so we have to make up like an animal is a bird?
Yes. So to make it make sense grammatically. The next example doesn't have to add in too much to it. This one actually has the word if in it. So the hypothesis is going to follow that word if. So my hypothesis is over here. And then this is my conclusion. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this. So if you are in Houston, then you are in Texas. And also keep in mind when you're doing the homework tonight, if they give you questions like this where they're giving you a sentence and they ask you to write it as a conditional, including the word if and then, the statements you're creating do not have to be necessarily true, but they're just asking you to add that in. Let's try another example. And we're gonna write all of the things we learned. So we're gonna do a lot of writing on the next slide. Pretty good? Okay, so for this one, it says let P be you are a guitar player. So remember, P is the hypothesis. And then Q is the conclusion. It wants me to write each statement in words and then determine or decide whether that statement that you're writing is true or false. So we're going to write the conditional statement. We're going to add the words if and then. So for the first one, for the conditional, I'm going to write in the word if, and then I'm going to put what I highlighted in red. That's my hypothesis. So if you are a guitar player, then you are a musician. And again, they had up there next to it, it had P and then the arrow Q. In words, this means if P, then Q. So what we're doing is taking what's highlighted in red, that's my P, and then the Q was what was highlighted in blue. And then I added in if and then in front. So now we have to decide, is this statement we just came up with true? If you are a guitar player, then you're a musician, and this one is true. So when you play a musical instrument, you are considered a musician. So true, guitar players are musicians. So if they ask you to decide if it's true or false, and if they ask you to explain, then you would rewrite a sentence explaining why it's true or false. Next, part B wants us to write the converse of this statement. So remember, for the converse, I switch the order. Okay, so for the converse, it's Q and then P. So again, what this means is if Q, then P. So let's go ahead and write it that way now. So if, and now I'll write the blue, you are a musician, then you are a guitar player. True or false?
False.
Beautiful. Okay, anybody know a reason why this is false?
Could be any instrument.
Beautiful. You could play any instrument. You could be a drummer. You could be a piano player. Any instrument other than a guitar, if you're a musician. So your reason would be that you play any, or just play, well, let's just leave it as play another instrument. Example, drums. Part C wants us to do the inverse. This is where we're going to negate the original. So for the inverse, we have not P and not Q. So in words, if not P, then not Q. So I'm going back to the original statement I wrote, but I'm going to add in the word not. This time I can just put in the word not, and it sounds correct grammatically. So if, and again, I could do red. If you are not a guitar player, then you are not then you are not a musician. True or false? False. Good. So even if you don't play the guitar, you could still be a musician. Okay? So here, even if you do not play the guitar, you can still be a musician. Again, you could be a drummer, piano player, just playing some other type of instrument. All right, and then the last one they want us to find was the contrapositive. So this is where we're going to do a combination of both B and C. We're going to flip and negate. So you can either choose to take C's answer and then just flip it, or you could take B, it's already flipped, and then add in the negation. So the contrapositive for the last one, this one is not Q, then not P. So in words, if not Q, then not P. So we're flipping and negating. So again, if you are not a musician, then you are not a guitar player. True or false?
True.
Good. True. So a person who's not a musician cannot be a guitar player.
Yeah, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
I thought that was the one where you added the IFF.
No, that's the biconditional.
Oh, okay, so for this one, you basically just do Converse, but you add the not?
Correct. All right. Next one says, rewrite the definition of perpendicular lines as a single biconditional. This is where we're going to add in if and only if. Now, all definitions could be rewritten as biconditionals. Remember, in order to be able to write a biconditional, the original statement and its converse have to be true. And again, you can choose to rewrite the biconditional either from the original or its converse. So in this particular statement here, this is the conditional. So my hypothesis here is in red, and here's my conclusion. Again, remember, when you are writing the hypothesis and the conclusion, don't include the words if and then. So the hypothesis here is only what's highlighted in red. It's not the word if. And it's then for the conclusion, it doesn't include the word then. It's everything after those two words. So then here is my conclusion, the Q. So again, with the math symbols, it would be P, an arrow, and then Q. That's how you would write a conditional. To write a converse, remember we flip it. It's Q, the arrow, and then P. Now because that's a definition, that is true. To write its converse, I'm going to take the if, going to take the blue, and again, I'm going to make it so it's grammatically sounding well. So if two lines are perpendicular, then, and I'll write the red, they intersect to form a right angle. Now, when it's asking us to write the biconditional, I can either choose to write it based off the original or the converse. I'm just going to go ahead and use my original. So now the biconditional with the math symbols, remember it's P, looks like a line or the double-headed arrow, and then it's got the Q, because it could go either way. So based off of my original, remember for the biconditional, we drop the word if. So I'm going to start with two lines, intersect, to form a right angle. Here's where I'm going to add in the words if and only if, and if again you want to just rewrite IFF there, and then you write the blue. Drop the word then. They are perpendicular lines. So you drop the word if, drop the word then. Where the word then was located, that's where you're putting in this. So this is where the word then was originally located. If you would have rather used the converse, then what you would have done is come up here for the converse. You could cut out if, cut out then, and then right here, what you're going to add in is IFF. So that's really all you're doing is chopping off if and then, and where the word then was, put in the IFF. Let's try one more example doing the same thing. It says rewrite the pair of conditionals as a biconditional. So I've actually crammed it together here. So here is my original conditional. If M is between L and N, then LM plus MN equals LN. This is the conditional, or the original. And then the converse is here. So this one, they gave you both. So you can choose here to either base it off the pink one or base it off the green one. Now, this is actually your segment addition postulate, so both of these are true. So to rewrite it, So if I do it off of the pink, remember we drop the word if, drop the word then, and then right here, I'm going to add in IFF. So my biconditional and it's based off the original, which is highlighted in pink. Again, I drop the word if, and I'm going to put M is between L and N, drop the word then, put in if and only if, LM plus MN equals LN. Now, if I want to write it off of the green, so if I do it off the biconditional, and that's the converse, the green, again, I would just chop off the word if, chop off then, and then here I would put if IFF. So for based off the biconditional, I would do the biconditional converse would be LM plus MN equals LN, and then I put in if and only if M is between L and N. So that would be based off the converse. So again, whenever they say to do a biconditional, you're getting rid of the words if and then in its place, remember you're adding in the IFF, if and only if. And that is it for section 1. So your homework is a PDF.